The night air in Sinchon carried the smell of street food and faint cigarette smoke. Neon signs flickered, their colors spilling across the narrow alleys. It was a place where students from Yonsei University often gathered after long lectures, chasing laughter and cheap beer. Yet, among the crowds, danger sometimes lingered like an invisible shadow. Kim Hanol, a 21-year-old literature student, walked home alone after an evening study group. Her phone battery had died hours earlier, leaving her with only the dim light of the street lamps to guide her. She tightened her scarf against the cold and stepped into a quieter side street. The sound of chatter and music behind her faded, replaced by the faint echo of her own footsteps. She had walked this alley many times before, but tonight it felt different. The silence pressed on her ears. A sudden scrape of shoes behind her made her heart stutter. She quickened her pace. The steps behind her matched. Hanol glanced over her shoulder. A man in a dark jacket kept a steady distance, his face hidden by a cap pulled low. He did not look like a student. He did not look like someone heading anywhere at all.
He was following.
Her breath shortened. She tried to appear calm, slipping her hand into her coat pocket where her keys rested like a useless weapon. The man drew closer, his presence heavy, his movements deliberate. At the end of the alley, the dim glow of a convenience store sign promised safety. But before she could reach it, the man lunged. A gloved hand shot forward, grabbing her arm. His other hand pulled something metallic from his pocket. The cold gleam of a blade caught the neon light. Hanol gasped and twisted away, her shoulder burning where his grip tightened. She screamed, her voice slicing through the still night. The sound startled the man, but his blade remained dangerously close. Doors in the nearby buildings creaked open. A passerby shouted. From a window above, a resident yelled down into the alley. The man cursed under his breath, his grip loosening just enough for Hanol to break free. She ran with every ounce of strength, her breath ragged, her vision blurring. Behind her, the man hesitated, torn between chase and escape. The sudden noise of a neighborhood was not in his favor. He vanished into the shadows, swallowed by the maze of alleys. Hanol stumbled into the bright light of the convenience store, collapsing against the glass door. The clerk rushed forward, eyes wide at the sight of her trembling body and pale face. She was alive, but the terror clung to her skin like frost. That night, Seoul's glittering lights did not comfort her. Instead, they revealed how fragile safety could be, even in the heart of the city. The next morning, Sinchon was as lively as ever. Students hurried to lectures, couples strolled along cafes, and the chatter of street vendors filled the air. For everyone else, the night before had been just another evening. For Kim Hanol, it had been a brush with death. She sat in a small police station near Yua, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. An officer scribbled notes as she recounted the events, her voice trembling with every word. She described the man's cap, his jacket, the knife, the sound of his shoes against the pavement. Yet she knew deep inside that her memory was blurred by fear. Faces became shadows when seen through panic. The officer gave her a polite but tired nod. "We will increase patrols in the area," he said. His tone was calm, yet there was something mechanical about it, as if he had repeated the same promise to too many others. Hanol left the station with no sense of safety. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door to her tiny rooftop apartment near Yonsei. The walls were thin, the wind slipped through cracks, and every sound outside became a threat. She sat by the window, staring at the alley below, half expecting to see the man again. That night, she could not sleep. The faint hum of the city felt different now, a chorus of hidden dangers. She replayed the attack again and again, each time imagining the blades striking closer, the grip tighter, the escape impossible. Her chest ached from the weight of it. 2 days later, she forced herself to walk through Sinchon again. The streets were crowded, filled with laughter and neon, but her eyes scanned every stranger's face. Her ears sharpened to every footstep behind her. The joy of her university days felt stolen. At the crossing near Sinchon Station, she noticed him. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. A man with a cap pulled low, lingering by the edge of the crowd. He was still there, still watching. Her heart dropped like a stone. She froze, gripping her bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. The crowd surged forward when the light turned green, but she stayed still. The man's head tilted slightly, and for the briefest second, she thought he smiled. By the time she blinked, he was gone, swallowed by the sea of bodies. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Was it real, or had her mind conjured him from fear? She did not know. What she did know was clear. She was not safe. Not in Sinchen, not in Seoul, not even in the comfort of daylight. That night, she locked her door twice. Then, she pulled her desk against it, sat in the corner of her room, and listened to the silence. But silence has its own voice, and every creak of the building whispered one truth. The shadow had not disappeared. It was waiting. Across the river in Gangnam, neon towers rose like glass giants. Beneath them, Park Ji-soo hurried down the bustling streets after another long day at her office. She was 26, an assistant manager in a trading company, her life revolving around deadlines and late-night subways. But tonight, something was different. She sensed it as soon as she left the station. A shadow trailing hers. A rhythm in the footsteps behind her that felt deliberate. Her chest tightened. She did not need to look to know who it was. Her ex-boyfriend, Young Hyun. A man once charming, now obsessive. He had sent her endless messages, waited outside her office, even followed her home. She had ended things months ago, but to him it was never over. She walked faster. He matched. She turned sharply down a crowded street, weaving through strangers. His presence did not fade. Panic bloomed. She ducked into a side alley, thinking she could slip away unnoticed. But the alley was too quiet, too narrow, and when she looked back, he was there. Hyun, stop this, she whispered, voice cracking. His smile was cold. If I can't have you, no one can. The glint of a knife in his hand froze her blood. She stumbled backward, her legs trembling. The street was empty, the sounds of traffic distant. She was alone with him. Then, like a miracle, the alley door of a late-night cafe swung open. A barista carrying rubbish bags stepped out. His eyes widened at the scene. Hey, he shouted. Hyun's expression shifted from rage to panic. He darted into the darkness, vanishing like smoke. Ji-soo collapsed, shaking violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. The barista rushed to her side, guiding her into the safety of the cafe's warm light. That night, Gangnam's glittering skyline seemed hollow. To Ji-soo, the towers were nothing but tall, silent witnesses to the danger she had narrowly escaped. Along the edge of the Han River, the night belonged to drivers. Lee Mi-ho, a 43-year-old taxi driver, knew the rhythm of Seoul's streets better than anyone. The hum of engines, the blur of headlights, the endless flow of strangers. One cold evening, he picked up a passenger near Mapo. The man slid into the back seat without a word. His hood was pulled low, his hands shoved into his pockets. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the taxi's engine. Where to? Mi-ho asked. Just drive along the river, the man muttered. His tone was sharp, uneasy. Mi-ho's instincts prickled. Something felt wrong. He kept his eyes on the road, the Han River glimmering to his left. Then, in the rearview mirror, he saw it. The man's hand sliding out of his pocket, clutching a knife. Keep driving, the man growled. Mi-ho's pulse pounded. Years of night shifts had given him patience, but never had he faced death at his back. He tried to stay calm, his voice steady. Look, if it's money, I'll give it to you. Just put the knife down. The man leaned forward, the blade glinting. Not money. Keep driving. Before Mi-ho could react, another voice came from the seat beside him. A second passenger, a young woman he had picked up earlier, shouted, "Stop the car!" She grabbed at the attacker from behind, her hands striking wildly. The knife slashed through the air, grazing Mi-ho's arm. Pain burned, but adrenaline surged. He slammed the brakes, the taxi screeching to a halt by the river. The attacker stumbled, the young woman's grip strong enough to give Miho time to escape. He flung open the driver's door and shouted for help. Joggers along the riverside turned, startled. The attacker bolted into the night, disappearing under the bridges. Miho clutched his bleeding arm, his breath sharp and heavy. The young woman sat trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. They had both survived, but the night left them with scars unseen. The city is vast, yet fear has a way of binding strangers. Kim Hanol, Park Ji-soo, and Lee Mi-ho did not know each other, but their lives had been touched by the same invisible hand. Reports spread quietly. A student nearly killed in Sinchon. A young woman stalked in Gangnam. A taxi driver attacked by the river. To most, they were stories buried in the news cycle. To the survivors, they were nightmares that would not end. Hanol read the headlines and felt a shiver. She was not alone in her suffering. There were others, breathing the same fear, walking the same haunted streets. One evening, she found herself in a small community meeting organized by local residents, a gathering meant to address safety in the neighborhood. The room was small, the chairs plastic, the air heavy with worry. That was where she saw Ji-soo. Their eyes met, a silent recognition passing between them. Different faces, different stories, yet the same shadow behind their eyes. When Miho later joined, his arms still bandaged, the connection deepened. None of them spoke much, yet their presence together was enough. They were no longer isolated. They were part of something larger, the city's hidden survivors. But among them was also a question none dared to speak aloud. Were these attacks connected? Or were they fragments of a city where shadows multiplied too easily? The silence in the room hinted at something darker, something unfinished. Seoul is crowded, yet danger often wears an ordinary face. For Hanol, it was the man in the cap. The memory of his stare haunted her nights, his presence lingering like smoke. Weeks passed, and yet she saw him again. Near Sinchon Station, among the crowd. By the corner of a bookstore, his head tilted down but his eyes locked on hers. She froze, unable to breathe. The people around her moved freely, unaware of the predator in their midst. She blinked, and he was gone. At the same time, Ji-soo reported strange calls late at night. Her phone would ring, the line filled with silence. Sometimes, faint breathing lingered before the call ended. She knew it was him. She felt it. Miho too began to notice. Parked in his taxi late at night, he would catch glimpses of a hooded man standing by the river, always watching, never approaching. The survivors shared these details when they met again. The room grew cold as the truth unfolded. Different attacks, different nights, but the same shadow. The man was not finished. He was hunting, waiting, choosing. And they knew, with a certainty that burned in their bones, that he would return. Seoul is crowded, yet danger often wears an ordinary face. For Hanol, it was the man in the cap. The memory of his stare haunted her nights, his presence lingering like smoke. Weeks passed, and yet she saw him again. Near Sinchon Station, among the crowd. By the corner of a bookstore, his head tilted down but his eyes locked on hers. She froze, unable to breathe. The people around her moved freely, unaware of the predator in their midst. She blinked and he was gone. At the same time, Ji-soo reported strange calls late at night. Her phone would ring, the line filled with silence. Sometimes, faint breathing lingered before the call ended. She knew it was him. She felt it. Miho too began to notice. Parked in his taxi late at night, he would catch glimpses of a hooded man standing by the river, always watching, never approaching. The survivors shared these details when they met again. The room grew cold as the truth unfolded. Different attacks, different nights, but the same shadow. The man was not finished. He was hunting, waiting, choosing. And they knew, with a certainty that burned in their bones, that he would return. The police continued their patrols, their reports full of reassurances. But to the survivors, reassurance was empty. The man was still free, still stalking. Hanol stopped walking home alone. Ji-soo changed her phone number, though the calls somehow returned. Miho began carrying a heavy wrench beneath his seat, his trust in strangers broken. But fear, when shared, can transform into resolve. The three began meeting more often, exchanging details, warning one another. They were no longer victims waiting silently. They were watching too. One evening, Jisoo spotted him again. At the edge of Gangnam Station, leaning casually against a wall, his cap pulled low. She froze, her body screaming to run. But instead, she lifted her phone. With shaking fingers, she snapped a photograph. The image was blurry, but the outline was clear enough. A man whose face was always hidden, but whose presence was undeniable. The photograph spread among them like wildfire. It was proof. He was real. He was not a dream. And he was closer than ever. The night was damp, the streets slick with rain. Sinchon's alleys twisted like veins, narrow and unpredictable. It was there that Hanul found herself cornered once more. She had left the library late, her footsteps echoing. Then she felt it. The rhythm. The presence. She turned and there he was. The man in the cap. Her scream caught in her throat. She ran, her shoes slapping against wet pavement. The alley stretched endlessly, each corner leading to another shadow. Behind her, his steps pounded, steady, relentless. She darted into a side path, her lungs burning. Lights blurred, signs flashed, but escape felt impossible. He was always behind her, never losing ground. Just when her strength faltered, headlights cut through the rain. A taxi screeched to a halt. Miho's voice bellowed, "Get in." Hanul dove into the seat, her chest heaving. Miho slammed the accelerator, the car tearing through the alleys. In the mirror, the man stood at the curb, watching, his face still hidden, his blade glinting beneath the rain. They had escaped, but only for now. The survivors were no longer bound by chance. Now, they were united by survival. Hanul, Jisoo, and Miho met in a quiet cafe near Hongdae, their faces pale, their voices hushed. The photograph lay on the table, the blurred outline of the man staring back at them. "He's following all of us," Jisoo whispered. "It's not random. He's choosing us." Miho clenched his fists. "Then we stop running." The cafe's lights flickered, the rain outside tapping against the windows. Each of them felt the same truth. Running had only kept them alive this long. If the man wanted them, he would find them again. They needed to turn the hunt around. That night, they prepared. Miho checked the wrench beneath his seat. Jisoo carried pepper spray in her bag. Hanul, trembling but determined, wrote down the times and places where she had seen him, drawing patterns on a map of Seoul. The net was tightening, not only around them but around him. The night of reckoning came, without warning. Jisoo left her office late, the streets of Gangnam nearly deserted. She felt him before she saw him. The footsteps, the shadow, the weight of being watched. Her phone buzzed. A message from Hanul. "We're close. Don't be afraid." Jisoo turned the corner, and there he was. The man in the cap. His knife flashed beneath the streetlight. He stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "You should not have run." Her legs shook, but she stood firm. Then, from behind, Miho's taxi screeched to a halt. The door burst open, and Hanul leapt out, her eyes blazing with fear and defiance. The man lunged. The knife slashed through the air. But Miho was faster. His wrench struck the attacker's arm, the blade clattering to the ground. Jisoo screamed. Hanul swung her bag, and together they fought with the desperate strength of those who had nothing left to lose. The man stumbled, his cap falling, his face revealed at last. Ordinary. Forgettable. A face that could vanish in any crowd. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The man tried to run, but this time, he was the one trapped. Miho tackled him, holding him down until the officers arrived. The blade was taken. The man was dragged away, his curses echoing into the night. The three survivors stood in silence, their bodies trembling, their hearts racing. For the first time, the shadow was gone. But the scars it left behind would stay with them, etched into the heartbeat of Seoul.